Hello there,
Hello.
it's Beck and Deb here, and welcome to our YouTube show. It's great to have you with us. So as always, just before we get started, we like to let you know what's coming up, what you can join in with, how to get involved and connect with us. So one of the things that we have got going on at the moment is our amazing mentoring program. 3 months, you can be in this conversation with us. You get tons of amazing stuff, lots of connection, lots of conversation. And at the moment, we're doing that as a one-to-one program. And we have, I don't know, maybe half a dozen places available on that at the moment. So if you would like to know a bit more about that, do get in touch. We're obviously on Facebook. You can comment below this video if you're on YouTube, and you can find us on LinkedIn or our website, daretobeyou.co.uk. So we'd love to have you as part of that. It's an amazing program. So
We would. And the other thing, we're always up to something. We're about to start, well, actually on the 22nd of June, we're going to start our next 5-day self-love challenge. So we would really, really love you to get involved in that. We absolutely love these challenges. They're a whole lot of fun, and they open up all sorts of things. Lots of amazing discussions happen in our Facebook group when we do that. So make sure that you sign up to our mailing list to do that. And when you sign up to our mailing list, you will get a free little ebook all about the lessons of self-love, because both Beck and I have really seen how knowing ourselves, you can't help but fall in love with yourself when you know yourself, and that's kind of, it opens up a whole new world when you do that. So we would love you to sign up, get this ebook, and then join us for our 5-day self-love challenge, because they're always a whole lot of fun.
yeah, you can sign up via our website, daretobeyou.co.uk, or again, you can find us on the Facebook group.
I'll make sure the link is below this.
Perfect. So you can find us. We'll make it as easy as we can. Because
and if not, just reach out to us. If you're struggling to find it, reach out to us, because we will always answer your messages.
Yeah, we're pretty visible. So on with the show. So Deb and I, yesterday, Monday and Sunday, so Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
I was going to say, you're going backwards.
Can I do my days backwards? So yeah, over the last 3 days, Deb and I have been part of an online virtual conference, and it's the biggest conference of this understanding in the UK, and normally takes place in London face to face, and there's usually about 1,000 people that get together and just hang out for 3 days in this conversation. A range of absolutely amazing speakers, and obviously because of the kind of situation at the moment with the kind of coronavirus and events not being able to take place in that way, the organisers actually brought the conference entirely online and did an incredible job.
They did a grand job. They did a really, really, really good job of it.
Yeah, and one of the things they do every year is ask people to kind of volunteer to help out with the organising and just helping it to go smoothly. And Deb and I volunteered to do that online with them this year, and it was absolutely, it was just tons of fun, wasn't it?
It was. We had our moments. There was a couple of moments of,
but so we also
technical stuff.
So we got to join in with that from the volunteer side. We got to, when we weren't kind of doing the volunteer role, we got to be in the room, or the Zoom room, listening to some of the speakers. And we also, for the first time this year, got to be speakers. We were in one of the Zoom rooms, sharing our kind of understanding of this. So we got to enjoy that conference from all sorts of different perspectives, didn't we?
Every angle, yeah.
And we just had the most fantastic 3 days. And so our living and learning this week is going to be all about kind of what we were hearing over those 3 days in lots of different ways. So Deb, what was kind of your biggest takeaway, or the thing that really struck you over those 3 days?
As always, I think it was kind of just going back to stripping everything away and going back to the absolute simplicity of what it is we share here. You know, that as human beings, we live in the feeling of our thinking. You know, we think something, we feel that, and that thinking looks really, really real in that moment. And so from that reality, we act. And it's kind of just, it is life-changing when we see that. And it's just been brilliant having 3 days of being pointed back. You know, we have amazing conversations about this, really, you know, conversations that sort of go really, really deeply into all sorts of things that happen to us in our lives. But I think for me, something that actually happened on a mentoring call last night was we were talking about, you know, that going, how deeply we can go into this, and it feels like the deeper we go, the more simple it looks. And so it was just amazing to be reminded of the simplicity, however much it looks like you are trapped in some reality, whatever that reality it is, no matter what. It's like, yeah, that's your thinking too. And to gently be pointed back to that is just so powerful. So yeah, I really loved that.
Yeah, that definitely, I heard that again as well. I mean, some of the speakers, there was just such a range of speakers, and some of them have been sharing this for sort of 40 odd years, and some of them, you know, like us, kind of more in the last 5 or 6 years, and even some that have only been a couple of years. And just because of that range, I think it's amazing that what I heard with every person I heard speak was that kind of come back to the simplicity. There's something really simple here. As human beings, we are exceptionally good at complicating things. We're exceptionally good at making our lives feel very complex and hard and difficult. And I just kept hearing every one of the speakers in their own way come back round to the simplicity of this.
And we talk about this, as you know, around relationships, because that's been, you know, where we've had a lot of experience in various different ways, and where we got into trouble. And it is like, I can see how complicated and how complex relationships look. You know, it's like there's this person, and whether it's, you know, your romantic other person in your life, whatever, and then there's your children or whatever, if you've got, and there's always like your siblings, there's all these things, and it feels like they're all interwoven, and it feels like there's such complications. And very, you know, on Facebook, it's like, what's your relationship status? It's complicated.
It's one of the options, isn't it? Yeah. And how much is that, you know, does that resonate for most of us? Yes it is.
Well, I can't exactly say what it is, because it's complicated. And I think, you know, it was just beautiful to be reminded that the only thing that is complicated is the thoughts that we have, that we believe to be true. And if that is kind of, if we see through that, it's like it falls away, all that complication falls away. And it's like, you know, it's simple. Human beings live in the feeling of their thinking, and all that's asked of us, or all that we have to do if we want to have a nicer, lighter, more fun experience, is to see that, to be open to hearing something around that.
Yeah, and definitely, like one of the things that I heard, it was the very first day, and it was the very first session that I was being the technical host for, which is entertaining all on its own. But it was the very lovely George Pransky who was speaking, and he shared fairly early on, someone asked a question, and I can't even remember what the question was, but his answer was just so simple. And he says it in such a gentle way. And what he was pointing to was that as human beings, we are wired to have new thinking. And when we have new thinking, we're just over whatever was going on a minute ago, an hour ago, a year ago. And his kind of take on that was, get over it. We are able to get over stuff. We just are wired. The minute we have a new thought, we are over whatever the last thought was. And so his kind of answer to this person, whatever it was they were kind of specifically asking, was, get over it, because you can. As a human being, that is how we work. And it's actually harder, and it takes more effort and more inclination to hold on to something than to get over it, because that's how we are designed. So it was like, it just in a really gentle, beautiful way, he kind of said to this person, get over it. It's gone. It's done. We're not there now. We're here. This moment is all that exists. So get over it. And it was just, I really heard, like, the way he said it was like, there's just such a simple truth in that.
Yeah. And I think we've been told so often that it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And that it's, you know, it's hard to get over things, and it's difficult to do that. And what I have seen is it's become such a habit to not get over things. We've made it such a habit to hold on to things, and we've been told for so long that, you know, that's how it is and that's the way that we do it, that we've forgotten how simple it is to do it.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes it can feel hard in that moment. And I know, you know, people that we've worked with and spoken to, when they've actually done that, they've kind of gone, it was really, really hard that time, but oh my gosh, it's my nature. I can see now how easy it is to do it.
Yeah.
So it's actually, you know, when somebody says to you, you're wired to do this. And all of us, you know, anybody who's listening to this, you're going to have had a problem in your life somewhere that looked like you were never going to get over it. And yet right now, while you're listening to this, if you just look back, you'll say, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm over it. What happened? How did I even do that? We don't even need to do it. It's built in that it's done.
Yeah.
And it's like seeing that and knowing that it is ridiculously simple. And yet when stuff happens out in the world, like there's all sorts of things going on, you know, at the moment with the pandemic, and then all this race thing that's come up. There's just so many things that look as if they are really, really difficult to solve and really, really complicated. And yet when we bring it back to that, the thing each and every one of us can do is learn about our true nature. And from there, life just is, it's so much more simple, so much less complicated than all of these interwoven relationships can look.
Yeah, and there's something that I heard in, it was an entrepreneur's business session that Aaron Turner kind of chaired and hosted with a couple of other people. And during that session, there were some questions at the end, and somebody asked a question about kind of money and how to know how much to charge people. And it was very kind of, the question was like, I really heard the question was like, yeah, I can see that, you know, we can do that in our business. And I know lots of other people that we've had that conversation. What do we charge? What's the right? And what, you know, a couple of people kind of shared some thoughts and ideas, and they were all kind of helpful. And then Aaron kind of waded in, and I just loved what he said and how, you know, I don't know if I can nail it quite like he did, but I'll do my best version. What he was really pointing to was the kind of question itself is content. You know, that's you know, that's detail. And what he was kind of coming back to, and again, this to me just points to that simplicity, is when we have muddy thinking, when we have a lot on our mind, when we are not clear, it literally does not matter what the content is. That is going to be a problem. It's going to look like a problem. You know, whether we are asking how much we should charge our customers, whether we're looking at the health of our relationship, whether we don't know what to cook for dinner, it doesn't matter what the content out here is. When we're in muddy thinking, when we're up in our heads, that is going to look like a problem. And the minute our mind clears, the minute we're back into, oh yeah, the only problem I ever have is a thought problem, then it doesn't matter what's out here. As soon as we see through it and we're clear, that never looks like a problem. And it was just that real simplicity, that real awareness of that, just knowing that the outside stuff, the content stuff, is never a problem. It's only going to look that way because of the state of our mind, because of how much thinking we have or how muddy our mind is. And it just, you can swap in any content you like out here and it will look problematic if our minds aren't clear. And I just loved the way he kind of brought that back round. You know, whatever, you could have swapped out any single question across the whole 3 days and it would have looked like a problem if you're coming from a kind of muddy mind. And just knowing that is amazing. Just knowing that that's how we work.
And then for me as well, like I was in a session with Nicola Bird. I was her technical moderator.
We had such fantastic titles, didn't we?
We did. Yeah, I was very, very important in that session. I was the technical moderator. But she was talking and something really struck me. And then when you shared that about Aaron, the two things just fit together so beautifully. It is like recognizing what our own mind does when it is muddy. You know, what is your muddy mind? Yeah. Because very often, you know, when we have clients will come and some people might say, you know, I just feel numb. My mind, there's nothing. My mind is just numb. Well, maybe that's what your muddy mind is. You know, when someone else will say, my mind's busy, it's crazy, it's going 20 like this. And it is, for me, you know, we talk a lot about knowing yourself. And knowing yourself is recognizing your own muddy mind. And if you take what you've just shared, what that Aaron said, if something is looking like a problem, then your mind is muddy. Now, what happens is when something looks like a problem, your mind says things to you like, I'm not muddy, I'm absolutely clear. I know there's times when I'm muddy and you need to, you need to come back here. But right now, there is a real problem here that you need to deal with. And trust me, I'm not muddy. And it's like recognizing that your version of when your mind does that. Because if something looks like a problem, no matter what, like Beck says, you can swap in anything. If something looks like a problem, your mind is muddy. And we can take those. I know I've used this as example a few times, but we've had talks with people and people have come back and said, yeah, I get that. I can see. We had something happen here just a couple of weeks ago with the printer, and I was trying to print something and the printer wouldn't print it, and I was trying to get my computer to speak to the printer. And I know I'm not the only one who has this problem, and and it really looked to me like that was a problem, and my mind was saying to me, no, I'm very clear, you need to get this thing printed. This is real, you need to get this thing printed. And it's like, I recognized in that moment, I felt tense, I felt up, but my mind was kind of saying, I'm very clear, this thing needs to be printed, and it needs to be printed now. This is a problem, but this is real, this isn't thinking, this needs to be printed. And what I love about the simplicity of this understanding was, I knew, because of that feeling that I was in, oh yeah, this is the thing my mind does when it's muddy. This is my muddy mind. And luckily for me, I knew that enough to walk away. And I've had a similar experience just, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, with something that I just couldn't, it was a button on our website. I wanted to change the colour.
Oh, yes.
I wanted to change the colour of a button. And I was getting up in my head because the work that I'd done just looked perfect, except this button was the wrong colour. And I was like, I couldn't see how to change the colour of the button. And it was like, this is a problem. This is real. I'm not muddy. No, this isn't anything to do with the muddy mind. This needs to happen. And yeah, that's what my mind does. That's my muddy mind. Walk away, stop for a minute. And the next time when I came in, I was just like, click, 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 change the colour of the button. And it was like, and for me, those two things go together just so beautifully. It is know when your mind is muddy. And the more that your mind is telling you that it is not muddy and that it is clear, and whatever it is, this creative thing that you've got going on, or this numbness that you've got going on, or this busy thing that you've got going on, your mind will present to you and say to you, oh, I'm not muddy. This isn't what we're talking about. That is. And it's seeing that for yourself, isn't it?
Yeah. There's just one more little metaphor I wanted to share, because it really hit me last night. So when the conference had kind of ended, throughout the 3 days, the technical team behind the scenes were very, very efficient and getting all of the recordings up fairly quickly on the website. And for those that had access to the conference, they've also got access to the recordings for 3 months. And last night, the conference had ended, and we'd kind of had a bit of downtime and watered the garden and stuff. And then I was heading off to bed and kind of was like, I'm not done. I'm going to go and listen to one of the, some of the sessions I wasn't able to be in. Yeah, I'm just going to check in and listen to something for half an hour or so. And I stumbled across, it was Aaron Turner again, actually. He was on fire
He's my hero, not yours.
He's on fire the last 3 days. So, I kind of just stumbled across one of his sessions, and he was talking about the very first sessions early on Sunday were, what are the principles? And he was sharing, somebody had asked a question about kind of thought, and how effectively kind of how is it that sometimes we just don't know that it's thought? How is it that sometimes, and he kind of explained a little bit, and the person was like, no, I'm still not hearing that. And he said, okay, let me try a metaphor, let me try a kind of analogy and see how that lands with you. And he dived straight into just a fantastic analogy, and I loved it. So I just wanted to share that as our final bit of living and learning this week. What he kind of said to this person was, imagine you're camping with, there's a group of friends and you've gone camping and it's a lovely evening and you've all sat around the fire, maybe you've toasted marshmallows or had a hot chocolate or whatever it might be, and you're just tucking into the night and you're all kind of gathered in your sleeping bags in your tent, and someone kind of says, let's tell ghost stories, won't that be fun? And so you're like, yeah, hyped up, that sounds like a great idea. And someone starts off and it's hilarious and you're all making funny woo noises and it's really funny, and you're all, someone's kicking someone else in the tent just to kind of wind them up a bit, and it's hilarious, and you're just having a great time with it, and that's fun. That's life, having a nice experience of life. He said, and then there comes that moment where suddenly you hear an owl hooting outside and your heart beats faster and you're like, the ghost stories aren't fun anymore, I'm actually scared. That's thought. That's when thought does its thing, when thought has you for a moment in its grasp. It's that moment at the camping trip where you suddenly are frightened of a ghost story, where you suddenly get drawn into it and you think, this is actually scary. There's noises outside the tent. What if there's real ghosts? What if there's something real here? That's what thought does. We have those moments where thought just does its thing and we don't notice and we're having a great time. And then we step into, oh, what if there's really a ghost outside my tent and it's come to hunt me down? That's what thought. It moves between that amusing, funny, light-hearted ghost story into, I'm actually frightened here. And that's it. And the minute you remember it's a ghost story and you're in your tent with your best friends, it's perfectly fine. And for me, that just really resonated.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what we're doing.
And I think that's what the principles gives us, isn't it? It's those moments, when we're by the campfire and toasted our marshmallows and laughing at the ghost stories, we don't need anything. We don't need to know anything. And yet when we're in our tent and that owl hoots and our heart starts to go, that's when the principles for me, that's when having this, useful. This is just thought again. That's
a ghost story.
Yeah,
I'm fine.
Yeah. And that's
no, I really love that. So that was my bedtime story with Aaron last night. So I think it is safe to say what our loving is this week.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I think it's just the amazing. All those, it's Julian, Aaron, Jude. I don't know. We can't
name them all because I think, for me, I think it's safe to say all of the team that run that conference, all of the speakers that turn up, all of the volunteers, and there are just going to be tons of people that are going on behind the scenes. Yeah, so everyone that turned up in some way whatsoever to make those last 3 days just amazing.
Yeah, they were brilliant. So the London, well, it wasn't London, the online, the virtual, the UK 3E Life 2.0 conference. Yeah, massive. Really, really loving it all. The hard work you do. It was just, there was some sessions that just touched so deeply. It was just a beautiful.
There was something like 1,000 odd people that bought tickets. So across the board, it was just an incredible event. So thank you very much. We loved it.
Absolutely. totally.
Yeah,
totally are loving this week.
So our question this week is, how do I deal with negative people? And it is, like, for me, that's such an amazing question off the back of everything we've just been sharing, because very much kind of what I was seeing over those 3 days is that kind of negative people is the ghost story, is that, we make that up. We see other people through our filters. And it's like somebody else, whatever experience they're having, they're doing the same as we are. They're having an experience of their thinking in that moment. And so am I. If someone's in front of me and I'm they're being negative and I don't like, and this, that, and the other, I'm just having the experience I'm having through that thinking in that moment. And that for me, the kind of how do I deal with, it's almost, that's that going back to what we were talking about a minute ago. It's like, that's the content out here. And that content out here is going to look unhelpful, uncomfortable, negative when I'm in muddy thinking, when I'm in thinking that tells me it shouldn't be that way, thinking that says that person's negative, thinking that says my energy isn't good when I'm around negative people. The only time that I feel that is when my thinking is doing what it's doing. And I heard somebody say at some point over the last 3 days, and that it's hard to pin down where I heard someone saying there's really only two feelings: comfortable or uncomfortable. We're either feeling comfortable or we're in discomfort. And then we can label them all sorts of fantastic other things, can't we? You know, we can have a host of comfortable feelings and a host of uncomfortable feelings. But essentially, we're either feeling comfortable or uncomfortable. And there is virtually no information in that feeling other than telling us the quality of our thinking at that moment. And I think what can happen often is that we kind of say, how do I deal with negative people, angry people, unhappy people? And it's like, we never have to deal with other people. We only ever have to deal with our own feelings. And they can either be comfortable or uncomfortable.
Yeah, I love what you were saying there. And it is, I think, with everything that's going on in the world right now, and I'm sure, you know, even if you're watching this in a year, there'll be something, you know, there's always stuff going on, isn't there? And one thing that I saw, you know, when I came across this understanding was I truly, truly deeply saw that the biggest gift that you can give to yourself and to the whole world, to the people you love the most, and the biggest gift that you can give is to understand yourself and know how you work, how you operate, and what is actually going on here. And so the how, you know, if we bring it back then to the how do I deal with negative people, trust me, there are times in my life when it feels like the people in my life are incredibly negative, you know, incredibly, you know, I can be around people and there's all sorts of labels we give to these people, isn't there? You know, that they suck our energy, you know, all sorts of things like that, that we hear and phrases that we use. But again, if we go back to the simplicity of what it is we are pointing to. And sometimes it can feel annoying because it can feel like, no, there really genuinely is this person in my life who is negative. That is nothing to do with me and nothing to do with thought. This person is negative, and how do I deal with this? To me, the way that you deal with a negative person is you come back to you. You look back to yourself. You bring it back to, what do you know about life? What do you know about yourself? What do you know about when your mind is muddy? What do you know about when your mind is clear? What do you know about the simplicity of this operating system that we are all a part of? What do you know about that? And the minute that we bring ourselves back there, that kind of, it opens something up. It opens us up to be able to see something different in that moment. And I had an experience over the last couple of days, and I can't remember the exact details of the experience, but there was somebody talking to me, and they were talking about another person who was in the wrong, and they'd done something bad, and they weren't being kind, and they weren't nice. And I just saw in that instance that, and I was agreeing with the person who was saying this. I could see what they were saying. I was like, yeah, I see that. And it's like, poor you to the person who was in the firing line, if you like. And yeah, this person wasn't being nice. And I suddenly saw the innocence of the person who wasn't being nice as well. I suddenly saw that they were caught up in their thinking. I suddenly saw it's no different. And we label, you know, ourselves as like, I'm not negative, I'm this person, and how do I deal with this negative person? And I really saw that when we bring it back and see there's no difference between the two. You are that person and they are you. And when we bring it back to us and we see something in ourselves, that disappears. In that moment when I was having that conversation and I suddenly saw this other person differently, the whole thing that we were talking about was just gone. It was like smoke and mirrors. It was like, oh yeah, there is no bully and victim. There is no negative and positive. There isn't two things going on here. It's only one. And when we come back to that, there is such magic in that. And it is so, it just comes from the absolute simplicity that we've been sharing. It just comes from, as human beings, we live in the feeling of our thinking. And when our minds are muddy, things look like a problem. Things look like they need dealing with. When our mind's clear, we see there's nothing going on here. There's nothing we need to deal with.
One of the things that kind of comes to me when we look at kind of people and label them negative or whatever it might be, essentially what we're doing is asking that person to do something we can't do. Because when we're kind of pointing out that, you know, they're negative, or it looks to us like they are, we're effectively saying that they're up against their thinking the same as I am, the same as you are, the same as Deb is. When we have thinking, we feel it. It's that straightforward. But if another person's having thinking and it appears that what they're then feeling is negative, or kind of behaving in a negative way, we're asking them to not feel their thinking, to feel something different to what they think, to get out of their lost thinking in a way that I can't, because I'm in lost thinking now, if I'm kind of seeing them that way. And we do that so often, don't we? You know, we're up against someone, or we're looking at someone and saying, they've just behaved like this, you know, and pick whatever behavior you like. You know, there's tons of stuff going on across the world. Pick a behavior. And we're saying, right, don't behave that way. Don't do what you've just done, even though you have thinking and believe it's true. And that's why you behave that way. Don't do it. Don't behave that way. I'm going to carry on over here behaving the way I behave because
of the thinking
I get my thinking and I believe it to be true. But you don't do that. You can't do that. And so for me, whenever there's something like that, whether it's negative people, whether it's the unfortunate and sad racist situation we've seen happen recently, whether it's somebody being stroppy in our house, whatever it is, because there's tons of stuff that happens, right? Whatever that is, I look at that and I notice this is what happens. I look at that situation and I judge it, or I think that person should have done something different. And then immediately I come back and go, where can I be different? How can I turn up differently? How can I be open to seeing something? And the place to see something is thought. The place to see something is the truth of who we are. So I then just hear that question. I hear myself say, well, can't Deb, smile more when that's happened? Or can't Lucy be this when she's feeling like this? Or can't, that person in America behave differently? Whatever it is that I'm looking at through my eyes, I then turn that back to me. Well, can't I smile more if I'm struggling? Can't I turn up and be a happier person when there's stuff going on in my mind? And I noticed that it's not as easy as it sounds at first listen. And yet it kind of is, like going right back to what we were saying earlier about, what George Pransky shared. Get over it. It actually can be that easy. Mm-hmm. And it's like, notice the times when I find it hard. Notice the times when I find it easy. And every other single human being on this planet is going to have their version of that. They're going to find some things incredibly easy and they're over it before it's even finished happening. And they're going to have things where they're really drawn in.
Some ghost stories are going to look scary and some not so much.
There's going to be some places where that ghost story looks real and frightening, and some places where it doesn't. Go on.
What's coming to me around that is something, I saw something that someone had shared on Facebook. I think it was Terry Rubenstein, and she shared
the very next sentence I was going to say. I was like, I'll let you dive in, but what I was going to say was, go on. Yeah.
And it's that saying that all of us have heard. We're all very, very familiar with it. Be the change you want to see in the world. And it is really, really easy when somebody else is being negative or being annoying or doing something that is, we see as wrong. Like Beck said, whether it's just someone else in your household who doesn't put a cup in the dishwasher the right way, or whether it is somebody murdering another person across the board, we sit and we look and we judge and we say that person should not have behaved in that way. And if we go back to that, be the change you want to see in the world, it can be really difficult, when big things or things that appear to us as big happen out here. It appears to happen out here. It's like there's got to be something more than going back inside and me being the change I want to see in the world. And that goes back again to the beginning, when we started today and we were saying we loved the simplicity of what this understanding points to. And I think one of the things that we do as human beings, when we take something like that, be the change you want to see in the world, then we look at other people and we say, well, I'm not murdering people, and I'm not a racist, and I'm not moody, and I'm not whatever it is. And so, but it is, and it looks like it's not going to be enough. It looks like simply you acting from kindness, you acting from love, you bringing this back, and you being that. How can that be? It's not enough. We need to do more. And yet what we're pointing to here, what we've been talking about since the beginning of this show today, is the simplicity of how this works. And I know a lot of the time Beck and I say something, take responsibility whilst knowing you're not responsible. And that to me points to the absolute simplicity of this. Take responsibility, bring it back to you, be the change you want to see. If you want more love and kindness in the world, be more loving and be more kind to that person who doesn't put the cup in the dishwasher the right way. That will be what changes murder on the street. And I know it feels like it can't be that simple, but it can. It is. That is what is asked of us. Take responsibility in those moments, in those small things. Be the love that you want to feel out in the world. And that is life-changing. That is huge. That is massive. And, back to that, it's complicated. No, it's not complicated. Life is simple and we complicate it.
And that, interestingly, that was kind of where I was going next. I'm really glad you went there, because it is, and what the post was written by Terry Rubenstein, and what she was kind of saying was, we throw that comment around, be the change you want to see them, like, oh, look at me, I'm spiritual, I know that's what. But it's then she kind of written this whole post, and one of the things she was talking about was some of the people that she kind of looks up to are people that never ask something of somebody else that they are not prepared to do themselves. So it's like, when we're looking out there and we're saying, that person's negative, don't ask them not to be negative unless you're prepared to start with you. Find the place in you, because when we're seeing that in somebody else, there's somewhere in us where we're doing that. And it's never ever about beating yourself up for it. It's never about kind of blame and guilt. It's simply about
courage, truth and love.
It's simply about courage, truth and love. Thanks, Deb. I didn't know what it was going to simply be about, but apparently Deb did. So that's it. It's courage, truth and love. And it's coming back to yourself and going, okay, from courage, truth and love, where can I be more positive? Where can I be, happier? Where can I do something different? And it can be the smallest thing, like when Deb is saying that about the cup in the dishwasher, it sounds so irrelevant against something like murder or racism. But what if it isn't? What if that simple change that you can make from you can change everything? It starts from there. And to me, it's like, we haven't been born into a system that's impossible to navigate. And it's because we like to complicate it that we make it impossible. But it's coming back and seeing that those simple changes right back here and now with me makes the biggest change across the board. Which I think takes us very nicely into our topic. So our topic this week is, it's all about relationships. And one of the reasons we chose that was because we mentioned earlier that we had a speaking slot at the conference for the first time this year, which was amazing.
Dreams do come true.
Yeah, they really do. And because so much of what we share is about relationships, and that was the area for me and Deb that particularly we kind of got into trouble with. That was our topic at the conference. So we spoke yesterday afternoon. We were sharing a room with some other new speakers. We kind of, the brand new faces that haven't been at the conference in that way before. We got to share a room, and we each kind of got to bring our topic to the table. And we picked It's All About Relationships because that makes so much sense to us. And so when we were kind of deciding on our YouTube show topic this week, we thought, actually, that's what we're going to be talking about at the conference. So it'll be nice to kind of pick some of that up today. And I know kind of one of the things that we did during, we had about 20 minutes, and what we thought we would just do yesterday on our slot was just share a little bit of our story, and then why life is all about relationships for us. So I don't know whether it makes sense to maybe kind of just reshare that a little bit today.
Yeah, maybe. So I'm very sorry if you've kind of heard this before a million times and it's a little bit boring now, because it does get, our stories can get a little bit boring, can't they? But I was in what was called an abusive relationship for over 20 years. And I don't even like that term anymore. I don't even like to talk about it in those terms, because it does not look like that to me anymore. But that was how it was labelled at the time, when I ended up in a women's refuge with 2 of my children. And my eldest daughter, I had actually sent her to live with my sister, because it wasn't good for her to be in the house anymore. And rather than leave that relationship, I sent my daughter to live with my sister. And the guilt and the shame and how much I hated myself because of everything that had gone on, because I hadn't got out of this relationship, because I didn't know how to deal with what was going on. I didn't know how to be. I couldn't see a way out. I was very, very lost. I was very confused. I was very insecure. It wasn't a great time in my life at all. And me and my children, we had a lot of help. We had a lot of support. There were some amazing people who helped me through that time, who I will, never forget how amazing human beings can be, how beautifully we step up when people need help in that way. It was just absolutely brilliant. And we had a lot of counselling and a lot of really, really well-meaning people trying to help us. But one of the things, the message that I was given, because of all the things that had happened, was that the best that I could hope for was that my children would learn coping strategies, and so would I. Basically, we would all learn to cope with what we'd gone through. That was the best that we could hope for. We would have this counselling and we would learn ways to cope with what we had gone through. And then we finished our counselling, we finished that, and I still felt lost. I still felt like there was a long way to go, and I didn't know how to parent my damaged children, and I didn't know where to go from here. I was still struggling. I was definitely better. I was definitely, a lot further forward than I was, but I was still not in a great place. And that's when I came across this understanding. That's when somebody said to me, human beings live in the feeling of their thinking, and we are wired to get over stuff. Circumstances don't cause us to feel certain ways. And I was blown away. I was, what? No one's ever said that to me before. People have always said, you've been through some terrible, terrible circumstances. Those circumstances will scar you forever. But don't worry, we can help you. We can get you to a place where you can live with what's going on. That's what I've been told. And when someone said, no, exactly like you were saying about George Pransky, get over it. And on the face of it, with everything that we had been through, maybe get over it, get over yourself can sound really, really cruel. But what I saw was, when I actually went inside and looked and asked myself that question from deeply inside, can I just get over this? Can I just go back to a place where it's as if this never happened? And you know what? The answer was yes. I was blown away. Can my children, even though they were small children when this happened, is it possible for them to go back to a place before this ever happened to them? Yeah, it is. That's how human beings operate. That's how we work. And I never knew. I didn't know that. Oh my gosh. That was like, wow. Does my thinking sometimes take me places I don't want to go? Does my thinking sometimes tell me a ghost story? Absolutely. Totally. Yes. But can I get over it? Can I remember George's words? Get over yourself. Yeah, I can. It blew me away. And kind of just experimenting with that, getting playful with that, getting curious, having an open enough mind and courage enough to be, what if that is true? What if these horrific stories that I can tell about my past don't mean anything? What if I can just get over it? And yeah, it opens something up in me, and I can see why sometimes it's like, no, it can't be that simple. I can see why that would be, why we would say that, but I'm living, breathing proof that it is that simple. We can do that. If we are courageous and we're interested in truth and we want to do that, we can.
And that, like, for me, it was very much, I was in my relationships were very unhealthy, and I'd kind of watched what had happened with Deb and was curious, like, what's going on with Auntie Deb? Why has everything changed? And very much like the reason that we talk so much about relationships and its life is all about relationships is because I don't think you can be any age and not have relationships in your life. You know, I watched my cousin and her baby, like from the minute he was born, he was in a relationship with his parents and with us. And, you know, as he grows, he starts to develop connections with other toddlers and that kind of thing. It's like there is no age that we're not having relationships with people. And across the board, you know, whether it is your parents, then, you know, your friends, then your partner, then your own children. And then you also have, you know, your work colleagues, the people that you meet on the streets, your community, whatever that might be. Just everywhere we look, we are in a relationship with somebody else. And very much for me, it was like starting to get to know myself, the relationship I have with me, changed every one of those relationships. It was like the central thing, you know, in my life, the first relationship is me. And then any relationship that kind of comes out from there is just going to be fed with whatever's going on from me. You know, we've been doing a lot of gardening over the lockdown, and I really kind of noticed that we've really kind of gotten curious about how to do gardening. You know, what's the real kind of what goes on there, and very much we've kind of played with how to layer our soil. You know, get the best out of it, and you know, apparently things like stinging nettles and grass cuttings and horse manure, those kinds of things feed the soil, and the plant grows stronger and better and kind of blossom. And I can really see that, like in the plants that we've planted, the kind of layers of that soil, the really real goodness that comes through from all of that helps that, you know, that soil goes out into the leaves and the flowers and everything that comes up through it. And that's the same with us. When we start with the relationship with ourselves, that goodness, that thing that we are seeing, starts to grow outwards into all of our relationships. And so very much for me, like when we say life is all about relationships, there's just nowhere in my life that hasn't benefited from seeing what we pointed to earlier, the simplicity of this, from me knowing that everything that's going on for me is my thinking, my what's going on from my mind. That just has changed me, and it has then changed my relationships.
And one of the questions that we got asked yesterday when we gave our talk, somebody said about how do the people around you, you know, if you have other people in your life and they haven't necessarily come across this understanding, or they're maybe not interested or something like that, how does this understanding, how does knowing what we know about how life works, knowing the fact that human beings live in the feeling of their thinking, knowing that sort of stuff, how does it help them? You know, if they don't want to come to the table, if they don't want to be in this conversation, if they don't want to hear that, how does that help? And exactly, you know, what you were just sharing then, Beth. The amazing thing about this conversation, about this understanding, is the only person who has to know this, who has to see this, who has to be curious about truth, who has to be courageous enough to look, is you. And I've seen that time and time again. And very often, certainly initially when we come across this, we're kind of like, yeah, I'm good, I'm seeing something here, something's really changing for me, but my partner or my daughter or my son or my cousin or my auntie or whatever, this person needs to know this, or they should see this, or how can I make them see it? How can they see this? How can they change? And one of the biggest things that I would say is, if you are in a place like this, just take a breath. Just take a breath for a minute and come back to you. The biggest gift you can give anybody, yourself, the world, another person, whatever, the biggest gift, the thing that you can do is you look, you stay in this conversation, you hear something, you do this. Don't worry about those other people. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about your mum or your friend or your sister or your cousin or your partner don't worry about those. Come back to you. Come back here. Just take a breath and come back to you. Because trust me, like Beck said, every one of her relationships has changed because she has changed. And that's been my experience too. Nothing can be the same on the outside when you are different inside. Because the inside, we see the outside through the inside. It's like, we're kind of in here looking out, and what we are looking through, that's what we see out here. So when we change, it can look as if it is impossible. And if we go back to our question, how do I deal with negative people? That person needs to change and needs to not be negative. When we change, when something in us changes, we cannot help but see something different. The world out here, there is not a world out here that is fixed in a certain way. The world changes as we change, which is why that sentence, be the change you want to see in the world, that's why that's enough. Just that. We could have done this whole show by just saying, be the change you want to see in the world. If we really looked to that and deeply saw it, that's more than enough.
Yeah, and very much like, it took me a long time to kind of see that, when I came into this conversation.
Me too. So don't.
It was kind of like, okay, there's problems, this relationship doesn't work because that person doesn't do what they should. That doesn't work because they've done the wrong thing. And, I can see some of the places where maybe me, but all of us need to. And it's like, when we say life is all about relationships, it really, really is the self relationship. It's like those relationships it will just have a knock-on effect on those relationships when we start to change. And, even things like when we kind of said, I was saying earlier about that question that someone asked about money and how to know what to charge. It's like, relationships mostly look like with other human beings, but we set it up that we have a relationship with our money or our job or our household or
the weather.
The weather. We start to see that life is all about relationships, and that doesn't just mean human being relationships. We relate to all sorts of things, but how we relate is via our thinking. Like we don't see another person entirely neutral. We see them through our thinking. We don't see our money or our job or whatever it is as neutral. We see it through the filter of our thinking. And the more that we begin to see that it is neutral, and then we have that thinking that we kind of look through, we look through the eyes of our own thoughts. And the more we kind of see that's neutral and I'm just having that story about it and putting that onto it, the less that it kind of draws us in and makes it something, the less solid that starts to look for us. And so whatever it is that's kind of the content of the problem, if you like, the situation that we think is difficult, the relationship with our partner, our relationship with money, whatever those things are, the more that we come back and look at the relationship with ourselves. How do I work? What's the truth of who I am? Where's the change that I can be making? Those are the things just start to change. And it's kind of this very almost weird magic that you kind of like, really? How is it possible that my money can be healthier, that my marriage can be different, that my children might behave better or leave the house on time? Yesterday in our session,
get their shoes on.
the other people that were sharing in that session were talking about parenting, and they were one of them was sharing that their child kind of never leaves the house or won't put their shoes on to leave the house on time, and the other one was saying it was the other end of the day, it was bedtime. They couldn't get their children to bed on time. And it's like those moments start to change.
They do.
When we see something different about who we are and how we work. So for me, it always comes back to relationships. When we get our relationship with ourselves in balance, it just rebalances everything else, because everything else is only ever happening through our thoughts anyway.
Yeah. And it can really, really, really look as if it has to be more than that. It has to be more complicated than that. But It isn't. Back again, right to the beginning of this, the simplicity of life and how life works, and the truth of who you are. You know, it's mind-blowing and life-changing when we begin to see that.
I think, like, we say this often, and I'm going to say it again because I think it's so important. The invitation here is to be curious.
Have fun.
Yeah, because we're sharing what's been our experience, and the difference comes when you have your own experiences and you see something for you. So it's never about, don't take our word for it.
No.
Go out, be curious. Who was it? Somebody said yesterday something about it's, what was their words? Kind of going out and seeing this for real in your own lives. They had a really good phrase for it, and I can't think what it was now, but it was road test. That was it. It was like, go out and road test this.
Yes,
be out in your lives and see where you can see something.
It is, get curious. If we've said something that you've thought, no, it can't be, no, sorry, it can't be like that. Exactly that. Road test it. Just go, well, what if it can?
It is.
And, prove that it isn't, if you like, and then come back and tell us.
Sure.
But it is absolutely nothing. You won't get anything from what we say, but you will get something when you look in your own life, and what you see there will make sense to you. And then you'll probably come back and go, well, why didn't you say it like this? Because it would have made sense if you'd said that.
But when we we were talking last night on a mentoring call, and someone was sort of sharing and saying, really all our job here is to invite you to be open. Yeah. To kind of trust what we're kind of pointing to, and be open for you to hear it from within you, because that's where the change will come, when you hear or see something.
Because that's what happened to both of us. I would have argued against this. There definitely would have been a time when I'd said, no, you don't get over things in that way. No, there was so much trauma. They're right. You're never going to be okay. I would have absolutely argued that point. And it was only when I saw something from within me that I was like, oh, it totally changed. So absolutely. And as Beck and I always say, just have some fun with it. Be lighthearted. Don't necessarily do it with the deepest, darkest things that really trouble you. No. Just like those playful ghost stories at a campsite. Have a bit of fun with it. Play. Get curious.
Yeah. So that sadly brings us to the end of our show. That's just sped by yet again. So next week, we are back next week with our topic next week is conflict resolution and resiliency. And our question next week is, what to do when my thoughts look more real? So we've obviously touched a lot on thought today, so that'll follow on quite nicely from this week. Yeah. So thank you very much for joining us. It's been great to see you all and share this conversation with you. And wherever you are and however you're connecting with us, there's lots of ways to connect and be in touch. We have a website, daretobeYou.co.uk, a Facebook group, Dare to Be You, with a purple heart at the end. We're on LinkedIn as Deborah Simmons, and where else are we? YouTube. I've missed YouTube. You can find us on YouTube, Dare to Be You. So wherever you're kind of watching this, if you want to connect, ask us questions.
And don't forget that we've got that 5-day self-love challenge coming up. That's totally free, and we have a whole lot of fun, and you never know, that is a way to get curious, to get playful, to see something, to see what you can see. So please, come and join us for that. That would be absolutely great to have you.
Yeah. So thanks very much.
Take care. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye.